The clock ticked loudly in the quiet showroom, each second stretching longer than the last. The air was thick with panic, a chaotic hum of whispers and hurried footsteps filling the space. Everyone was running around like headless chickens, their faces pale with worry. It was supposed to be the most glamorous event of the season, a high-profile photo shoot for one of the most exclusive wedding gown collections. But now, disaster loomed. The lead model had just called in sick, her voice barely audible over the phone as she muttered something about food poisoning, and there was no backup, no plan B, just an empty dress rack, a ticking clock, and mounting pressure from the CEO himself, who was known for his icy demeanor and zero tolerance for failure. In the corner of the room, clutching a clipboard tightly to her chest, stood Mia, the intern. She'd only been at the company for 3 weeks, fresh out of college with wide-eyed dreams of making it big in the fashion industry. Today was supposed to be her day off, but when her boss called her in just in case, she didn't hesitate. After all, this was her chance to prove herself, to show everyone that she wasn't just another nameless face in the crowd. Little did she know how much proving herself would mean today. As chaos unfolded before her eyes, Mia couldn't help but feel a strange mix of terror and excitement bubbling inside her. This wasn't what she signed up for, but maybe it could be exactly what she needed. The collection itself was breathtaking, designed by none other than the infamous CEO of Lux Bridal, Adrian Carter, a man whose reputation preceded him. Adrian was known not only for his sharp business acumen but also for his unrelenting perfectionism. He demanded excellence from everyone around him, and woe betide anyone who fell short of his sky-high standards. His latest bridal line had already generated buzz across social media, with its intricate lacework, cascading silhouettes, and ethereal designs promising to redefine modern elegance. Every piece told a story, every stitch whispered romance. But now, without a model to bring those gowns to life, the entire project teetered on the brink of collapse. And standing right in the middle of it all was Mia, the girl no one expected. To save the day, Adrian strode into the room like a storm cloud, his presence commanding immediate silence. Tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating authority, he scanned the room with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through every excuse and half-hearted attempt at damage control. When his gaze landed on the empty chair where the model should have been sitting, his jaw tightened. "What's going on?" he barked, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. One of the assistants stammered out an explanation, gesturing wildly toward the phone still lying on the table. Adrian listened, his expression unreadable, until the assistant trailed off, clearly bracing for the worst. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, with a slow exhale, Adrian turned to the team. "We're not canceling," he said firmly. "Find someone. Anyone." Mia froze as his eyes swept over the room again, lingering briefly on her before moving on. She felt invisible and, yet somehow, she knew this was her moment. The idea forming in her mind was reckless, almost laughable. Her walk the runway in a multi-$1,000 gown, pose for cameras while Adrian Carter watched her every move. It sounded insane, but then again, so did letting the entire campaign fall apart because they couldn't find a replacement. Taking a deep breath, Mia stepped forward, her heart pounding. In her ears, "I'll do it," she said, her voice trembling but clear enough to catch everyone's attention. Heads turned, eyebrows raised, and for a split second, she wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Adrian's reaction was immediate and unexpected. He studied her for a long moment, his expression inscrutable. Finally, he nodded once. "Fine," he said curtly, "but you better not waste my time." With that, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Mia standing there, stunned but determined. The next few minutes passed in a blur. Someone shoved a robe into her arms and ushered her toward the dressing area. The stylist fussed over her hair, pinning it up hastily while muttering under her breath about impossible deadlines. Meanwhile, the gown awaited her hair masterpiece of ivory, silk and hand-sewn pearls that shimmered even under the harsh fluorescent lights. As Mia slipped into it, she felt a strange transformation taking place. This wasn't just fabric draped over her body. It was art, history, a dream come true. And suddenly, the weight of what she was about to do hit her full force. The photographer arrived shortly after, setting up his equipment with practiced efficiency. He gave Mia a quick once-over, nodding approvingly. "You've got potential," he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Still, his words gave her a small boost of confidence. Adrian reappeared just as the first shot was being set up, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. His gaze never left her, scrutinizing her every movement. It was unnerving, to say the least. Each pose felt awkward, each step hesitant. But then, something shifted. Maybe it was the way the gown seemed to mold itself to her figure, or perhaps it was the realization that she had nothing left to lose. Whatever it was, Mia found herself relaxing into the role. Her movements became fluid, her smile genuine, and when she glanced up and caught Adrian watching her with something akin to admiration, she knew she'd stumbled onto something extraordinary. But just as things started falling into place, a new challenge emerged. One of the seams on the gown began to pull, threatening to unravel entirely. The stylist gasped, rushing over to assess the damage. Panic rippled through the room once more. If the gown tore, it wouldn't just ruin the shoot, it could jeopardize the entire collection. Adrian's voice cut through the commotion like a whip. Fix it now. The urgency in his tone sent chills down Mia's spine. She glanced at the seamstress, who was frantically threading a needle, and then back at Adrian, whose steely gaze remained fixed on her. Time seemed to stand still as the repair work continued, the tension in the room palpable. Would the gown hold? Could she pull this off? Just as the stylist gave her a thumbs up, signaling that the crisis had been averted for now, the photographer called for the final shot. Mia took her position, her heart racing. The camera clicked, capturing the moment forever. But as Adrian approached her afterward, his expression unreadable, she realized the real story was only beginning. What would he say? And more importantly, what would happen next? As the initial shock of the morning began to settle, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of something monumental. The photo shoot had been a whirlwind of emotions, from sheer terror to fleeting triumph, and now here she was, staring into the eyes of a man who could make or break her career with a single word. Adrian stood before her, his tall frame exuding an aura of authority that was both intimidating and magnetic. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, emphasizing his broad shoulders and commanding presence. Yet, beneath the polished exterior, there was an intensity in his gaze that hinted at layers far deeper than the public persona he projected. Mia swallowed hard, trying to steady her nerves as she waited for him to speak. "You surprised me," Adrian finally said, his voice low and measured. There was no trace of sarcasm or condescension, just a raw honesty that caught Mia off guard. She hadn't expected praise or anything close to acknowledgement from someone like him. Not many people can step into a situation like that and handle it with grace. His words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Grace. Was that really what he saw in her clumsy attempts to fill the shoes of a professional model? Or was he simply acknowledging her willingness to take a risk when everyone else had faltered? Either way, his comment ignited a spark within her, fueling a quiet determination to rise to whatever challenges lay ahead. Their interaction was brief, yet it left an indelible mark on Mia. As Adrian turned to confer with the photographer about the final edits, she found herself stealing glances at him. There was something enigmatic about the way he carried himself, a blend of charisma and aloofness that intrigued her. It wasn't just his power or influence that drew her in, it was the subtle glimpses of vulnerability she thought she detected. Beneath the surface, the slight furrow of his brow when he examined the shots on the camera screen, the way his lips pressed together ever so slightly when he wasn't pleased with something. These tiny details painted a picture of a man who was deeply invested in his craft, perhaps to the point of obsession, and yet there was a loneliness about him too, a guardedness that suggested he kept the world at arm's length. For Mia, this encounter marked the beginning of a complex dynamic. On one hand, she admired Adrian's dedication and vision. He was the driving force behind Luke's Bridal's success, a genius in his own right, who demanded perfection because he believed in the transformative power of beauty. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the tension that crackled between them, an unspoken awareness that went beyond mere professionalism. Was it respect? Curiosity? Something else entirely? She didn't have answers, but she knew one thing. For certain, her path was now intertwined with his, in ways she couldn't fully comprehend yet. As the team packed up the equipment and prepared to leave the showroom, Mia lingered behind, savoring the quiet aftermath of the whirlwind day. She ran her fingers lightly over the gown, now carefully folded and stored away, marveling at how it had changed her in such a short span of time. It wasn't just the fabric or the design that had left an impression, it was the experience of stepping into a role she never imagined for herself and discovering strengths she didn't know she possessed. But even as pride swelled in her chest, doubt crept in too. Had she truly earned Adrian's approval, or was this merely a fleeting moment of goodwill? What would tomorrow bring? Would he remember her when the dust settled, or would she fade back into obscurity? just another intern trying to make her mark. Unbeknownst to Mia, Adrian was grappling with questions of his own. As he reviewed the photos on his laptop later that evening, his thoughts drifted back to the young woman who had stepped up in a moment of crisis. There was something about her resilience, her authenticity that lingered in his mind long after the shoot ended. He prided himself on his ability to read people, to see past facades and discern their true potential. With Mia, he sensed untapped talent, a spark waiting to ignite. But there was also a restlessness in her eyes, a hunger for more that resonated with him on a personal level. He recognized it because he had once felt it himself, years ago when he was clawing his way to the top of the fashion world. Could she handle the demands of this industry? Did she have what it took to endure the relentless grind and unyielding scrutiny? Or would the pressure crush her before she even had a chance to shine? These musings weighed heavily on Adrian as he sat alone in his dimly lit office, the city skyline glittering outside his window. Success had come at a cost for him, isolating him from relationships and forcing him to prioritize ambition over everything else. He often wondered if the sacrifices were worth it, if the accolades and wealth truly filled the void inside him. Seeing Mia reminded him of a younger version of himself, hopeful, driven, and eager to prove her worth. But it also stirred something unfamiliar, a protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. Perhaps it was because she represented possibility, a reminder that the journey was just as important as the destination. Or maybe it was simpler than that. She had surprised him, and in doing so, awakened a part of him that had grown dormant. The following morning brought a flurry of activity as the post-shoot buzz rippled through the office. Word spread quickly about the intern who had saved the day, turning what could have been a disaster into a triumph. Whispers followed Mia wherever she went, some curious, others skeptical. "Did you hear? She actually pulled it off," one assistant exclaimed during a coffee break. Another chimed in, "I heard Adrian liked her. Like really liked her." The gossip mill churned relentlessly, painting vivid scenarios that ranged from improbable promotions to scandalous romances, while Mia tried to brush off the attention, focusing instead on her assigned tasks. She couldn't deny the shift in how people treated her. Colleagues who had barely acknowledged her existence before now greeted her warmly, offering smiles and small talk. Even her supervisor seemed to regard her with newfound respect, assigning her responsibilities that hinted at trust rather than oversight. But amidst the external changes, Mia's internal landscape remained turbulent. Doubt gnawed at her, whispering insidious questions she couldn't silence. Had she gotten lucky, or did she genuinely deserve the praise? Was this a turning point in her career, or just a fleeting moment of validation that would soon fade? Uncertainty bred anxiety, manifesting in sleepless nights and restless days. She replayed the photo shoot in her mind over and over, dissecting every detail: the way she'd held her chin, the angle of her stance, the flicker of emotion in Adrian's eyes when he complimented her. Each memory was both exhilarating and terrifying, a reminder of how close she'd come to failure and how precariously balanced her success felt. Meanwhile, Adrian wrestled with his own inner turmoil. Though outwardly composed, he found himself distracted by thoughts of Mia. He replayed their interactions, analyzing her expressions and mannerisms as though searching for clues to unlock a mystery. Why did she intrigue him so much? Was it her courage, her humility, or something more intangible? The questions plagued him, blurring the lines between professional interest and personal curiosity. At meetings, he caught himself zoning out, his mind drifting back to the image of her in that gown, radiant and poised despite the chaos swirling around her. It unsettled him, this inability to compartmentalize, to maintain the detachment that had always served him well in the past. Worse still, he couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that his growing fascination with her might jeopardize the very foundation of his carefully constructed world. Back in the office, the ripple effects of Mia's impromptu modeling debut continued to unfold. Projects that had once stalled due to lack of inspiration suddenly gained momentum, sparked by the energy and enthusiasm she unintentionally injected into the team. Designers gathered around mood boards, sketching ideas inspired by the marketing strategists brainstormed campaigns centered on authenticity and empowerment, themes they attributed to Mia's natural charm. Even Adrian noticed the shift, observing how her presence seemed to galvanize those around her. Yet, despite the positive impact, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Not everyone was thrilled about the sudden spotlight on the intern. Some senior staff members bristled at the idea of an inexperienced newcomer overshadowing their contributions. while others questioned whether Adrian's apparent favoritism signaled a broader shift in company culture. Amidst these dynamics, Mia struggled to navigate her newfound visibility. Every task she completed felt magnified, every decision scrutinized. She second-guessed herself constantly, fearing that any misstep would confirm the skeptic's doubts and undo the fragile progress she'd made. The pressure mounted further. When Adrian requested her input on a key presentation, standing in front of the team, she fought to steady her voice as she shared her ideas, acutely aware of the weight of expectations pressing down on her. To her relief, her suggestions were met with nods of approval, and Adrian himself offered a rare smile, a gesture that sent a wave of validation coursing through her. But even as she basked in the momentary triumph, she couldn't ignore the unease lurking at the edges of her consciousness. How long could she sustain this balancing act? And what would happen if she faltered? As the days stretched into weeks, the connection between Mia and Adrian deepened, albeit cautiously. Their interactions grew more frequent, driven by necessity as much as curiosity. Adrian sought her opinion on design concepts, valuing her fresh perspective. In turn, Mia found herself drawn to his unwavering commitment to excellence. Learning from his meticulous approach to problem solving, they worked late nights side by side, poring over sketches and fabric swatches, their conversations evolving from strictly professional to something warmer, more personal. Adrian shared anecdotes from his early days in the industry, revealing glimpses of the struggles that shaped him. Mia reciprocated with stories of her own aspirations, her voice tinged with a vulnerability that disarmed him. These moments created a bond neither of them had anticipated, one that blurred the boundaries between mentorship and camaraderie. Yet for all the progress they made, shadows loomed on the horizon. Rumors about their relationship persisted, morphing into exaggerated tales that painted them as either allies or adversaries. Some speculated that Adrian's interest in Mia stemmed from ulterior motives, while others accused her of leveraging her proximity to him for personal gain. The whispers reached a crescendo when a tabloid published an article featuring grainy photos of them leaving the office together, accompanied by salacious headlines questioning the nature of their association. Both Mia and Adrian were blindsided by the intrusion, forced to confront the reality that their actions, no matter how innocent, were subject to interpretation and judgment. Adrian handled the fallout with characteristic stoicism, issuing a terse statement dismissing the claims as baseless. But Mia felt the sting of betrayal, wondering if she'd unwittingly compromised her integrity by allowing herself to get too close to someone so powerful. Despite the challenges, neither of them shied away from their collaboration. If anything, the controversy strengthened their resolve to stay focused on their shared goals. Adrian doubled down on mentoring Mia, guiding her through the intricacies of the fashion world, while encouraging her to trust her instincts. For her part, Mia embraced the opportunity, channeling her anxieties into creativity. Together they refined the bridal collection, infusing it with elements that reflected their unique partnership. The process was grueling, requiring countless revisions and sleepless nights, but it also brought them closer. Late one evening, as they finalized the last details of the campaign, Adrian paused to look at Mia. "You've come a long way since that day in the showroom," he remarked, his tone softer than usual. She smiled, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "So have you," she replied, her words carrying a depth neither of them fully understood yet. The culmination of their efforts arrived sooner than either of them expected. The launch event for the bridal collection was scheduled to take place in just a few days, transforming the office into a hive of frenetic activity. Models rehearsed their walks, stylists perfected hairstyles, and designers adjusted hems with painstaking precision. Amidst the chaos, Mia found herself juggling multiple roles, coordinating logistics while ensuring every detail aligned with Adrian's vision. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages and reminders, each notification adding to the mounting pressure. Despite the stress, there was an undeniable thrill in seeing the fruits of their labor come to life. The gowns, displayed on mannequins, scattered throughout the showroom, exuded an ethereal beauty that left even the most seasoned professionals awestruck. But as the hours ticked away, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, a final touch that would elevate the collection from impressive to unforgettable. Adrian noticed her preoccupation during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice cutting through the hum of activity. Startled, Mia hesitated before voicing her thoughts. "It's just, I think we need something more, something unexpected." Adrian raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Go on," he prompted. Taking a deep breath, she outlined her idea, a surprise. appearance by a model wearing a gown inspired by the original dress she'd worn during the photo shoot. It would serve as a tribute to the serendipitous moment that sparked the entire campaign, tying the narrative together in a way that resonated emotionally. Adrian listened intently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, considering her proposal. "It's risky," he admitted after a pause, "but it could work. Let's do it." With renewed purpose, Mia threw herself into executing the plan. She coordinated with the design team to recreate the gown, incorporating subtle updates that reflected the evolution of the collection. The process was fraught with challenges: fabric shortages, last-minute alterations, but she persevered, fueled by the knowledge that this was her chance to leave an indelible mark. As the deadline approached, exhaustion began to take its toll. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she pinned fabric in place. Yet, through it all, she refused to give up, driven by a determination that bordered on obsession. Adrian watched her transformation with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he warned one evening, catching her as she swayed on her feet. She shook her head, brushing off his concern. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her voice betrayed the strain. "This is important." Finally, the night before the event, everything fell into place. The gown was complete, a masterpiece that captured the essence of the collection while paying homage to its origins. Mia stood back, surveying the finished product with a mixture of pride and disbelief. She had done it against all odds. She had seen her vision through to fruition. But as she locked up the showroom and headed home, a nagging question lingered in her mind. Would Adrian recognize the significance of what she'd accomplished? More importantly, would he understand the personal stakes riding on this moment? As dawn broke over the city, casting golden light across the skyline, Mia prepared for the biggest day of her life. The stage was set, the audience awaited, and the spotlight beckoned. All that remained was to step into it and hope that she wouldn't falter under its glare. The morning of the launch event dawned bright and crisp, the kind of day that seemed tailor-made for celebration. Mia woke early, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. She moved through her routine mechanically, choosing an outfit she hoped struck the perfect balance between professional and approachable. As she applied the finishing touches to her makeup, her reflection stared back at her, wide-eyed and uncertain. Who was this person staring back at her? The shy intern who had stumbled into a photo shoot weeks ago? Or someone stronger, more confident, ready to face whatever came next? Shaking off the introspection, she grabbed her bag and headed out the door, steeling herself for the whirlwind ahead. When she arrived at the venue, the atmosphere was electric. Crews bustled about, setting up lights and arranging seating arrangements. Models flitted between dressing rooms, their laughter echoing down the hallways. Backstage, the energy was palpable, a blend of adrenaline and anticipation. Mia navigated the chaos with practiced ease, checking off items on her mental checklist. Everything had to be perfect, there was no room for error. As she supervised the final preparations, her phone buzzed incessantly with updates and reminders. Each message added to the mounting pressure, but she pushed forward, drawing strength from the knowledge that this was her moment to shine. Adrian arrived just as the first guests began filtering in, his presence immediately commanding attention. Dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit, he exuded authority and poise. His eyes scanned the room, assessing every detail with a critical eye. When he spotted Mia, he made his way over, his expression softening slightly. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his tone betraying a hint of genuine concern. She managed a shaky smile. "Nervous, but okay," he nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've done incredible work. Trust yourself." His words bolstered her confidence, grounding her in the midst of the storm. As the event unfolded, the collection received rave reviews. Guests marveled at the craftsmanship and innovation, applauding Adrian's leadership and vision. But the true highlight came during the finale, when the surprise gown made its debut. The model glided down the runway, the fabric shimmering under the lights, eliciting gasps of awe from the audience. Mia watched from the wings, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. This was it, the culmination of everything she had worked for. The applause was thunderous, a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Adrian joined her backstage, his expression a mix of pride and wonder. "You did it," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. She nodded, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. But as the euphoria began to settle, a new tension bubbled to the surface. Reporters clamored for interviews, eager to uncover the story behind the collection's success. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, and questions flew thick and fast. How had an intern risen to such prominence? What was her relationship with Adrian? The scrutiny was relentless, and Mia felt the walls closing in. Adrian shielded her as best he could, deflecting invasive queries and steering her toward safer topics. Yet, the weight of expectation pressed down on her, threatening to undo the fragile equilibrium she had fought so hard to achieve. As the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed, Mia found herself alone with her thoughts, grappling with the realization that her journey was far from over. What lay ahead was anyone's guess. But one thing was certain: she was no longer the same person who had stepped into that showroom weeks ago. And as Adrian approached her once more, his gaze steady and unwavering, she wondered if they were both ready for whatever came next. The afterglow of the launch event lingered in the air, but for Mia it felt like a fragile illusion. The applause had faded, the guests had departed, and the showroom was now eerily quiet, save for the hum of cleanup crews dismantling the setup. She stood by the window, staring out at the city lights, her mind racing with questions that refused to settle. What had she truly accomplished tonight? Was this the peak of her journey, or just the beginning of something far more complicated? Adrian's words echoed in her head. You did it, but they carried an undertone she couldn't quite decipher. Pride, relief, or perhaps something closer to warning. Whatever it was, it left her uneasy. Adrian approached quietly, his footsteps muffled against the carpet. He stopped beside her, following her gaze to the glittering skyline. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, charged with unspoken thoughts and emotions. Finally he broke it. That gown, it told a story, he said, his voice low and reflective. Your story. Mia turned to look at him, startled by the observation. She hadn't expected him to see it that way, to recognize how deeply personal this collection had become for her. But then again, maybe she shouldn't have been surprised. Adrian had a knack for seeing beneath the surface, for unraveling truths others overlooked. Still, hearing him acknowledge it aloud sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't just my story, she replied cautiously, choosing her words carefully. It was everyone's, the team, the designers, you. Her voice trailed off as she realized how hollow the statement sounded even to her own ears. Adrian didn't respond immediately. Instead he studied her profile, his sharp eyes missing nothing. Don't sell yourself short, he said finally, his tone firm yet gentle. You brought something unique to this project. Something I haven't seen in a long time. His praise caught her off guard, stirring a mix of pride and discomfort. She wanted to believe him, to trust that she deserved the recognition, but doubt gnawed at her relentlessly. How could she reconcile the timid intern she used to be with the confident woman standing here now? Their conversation shifted gears as Adrian steered them toward logistics. There were press releases to review, social media campaigns to approve, and interviews scheduled for the coming days. The whirlwind wasn't over. If anything, it was only intensifying. As he outlined the next steps, Mia listened intently, nodding along while her mind wandered. Beneath the polished veneer of success lay a web of complexities she hadn't anticipated. The media frenzy surrounding her role in the collection had taken on a life of its own, fueled by speculation about her relationship with Adrian. Tabloids continued to churn out headlines, some playful, others pointedly critical. Intern turned muse. Is this love or ambition? Read one particularly inflammatory article. The words stung not because they were true, but because they highlighted the precarious balance she had to maintain. Mia's unease deepened when she overheard snippets of conversations among colleagues. Some praised her ingenuity and dedication, crediting her with revitalizing the brand. Others whispered behind closed doors, questioning whether her rise was merit-based or merely a product of favoritism. The division within the office was subtle, but palpable, creating an undercurrent of tension that made every interaction feel fraught. Even those who smiled warmly at her seemed to carry lingering doubts, their compliments tinged with skepticism. It was exhausting, navigating this minefield of perception and reality, and Mia found herself retreating inward, guarding her thoughts more closely than ever before. Adrian, to bore the brunt of the scrutiny. As CEO, he was no stranger to criticism, but this was different. The spotlight wasn't solely on his professional decisions anymore, it extended into his personal life, probing areas he preferred to keep private. Board members hinted at concerns about optics, urging him to distance himself from Mia to avoid further controversy. Friends outside the company offered unsolicited advice, cautioning him against letting emotions cloud his judgment. Yet, despite The pressure mounting around him, Adrian remained steadfast in his support of Mia. He defended her contributions whenever questioned, emphasizing her talent and hard work. To outsiders, it might have seemed like a calculated move to protect his investment in the campaign. But Mia knew better, or at least she thought she did. There was sincerity in his actions, a genuine belief in her potential that transcended mere strategy. As the days passed, Mia began to notice changes in Adrian's demeanor. The man who once exuded unshakable confidence now appeared burdened, his usual composure giving way to moments of introspection. During meetings, he would pause mid-sentence, lost in thought, before shaking himself back to attention. Late at night, when most of the staff had gone home, she'd catch glimpses of him pacing his office, his brow furrowed in concentration. It was as if the weight of everything, the success of the collection, the scrutiny from the public, the growing connection between them, was slowly wearing him down. And though he tried to mask it, Mia could see the cracks forming. One evening, as they worked side by side reviewing feedback from the launch, Mia decided to broach the subject. "Are you okay?" she asked hesitantly, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Adrian glanced up, startled by the question. For a moment, he considered brushing it off with a dismissive remark, but something in her expression stopped him. Instead, he sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I've been better," he admitted, surprising even himself with the honesty. Mia hesitated, unsure whether to push further or let the matter drop. Ultimately, curiosity won out. "Do you regret any of this?" she ventured cautiously, gesturing vaguely to encompass the events of recent weeks. Adrian's response was slow in coming. When he finally spoke, his words carried a weight that took her aback. "Regret is a luxury I can't afford," he said, his tone tinged with bitterness. "But sometimes, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing for the company, for you." His voice trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. Mia frowned, her chest tightening at the implication. "For me," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, avoiding her gaze. "You've been thrust into a world you weren't prepared for. I worry about what it's costing you." His admission hung in the air between them, raw and unsettling. For the first time, Mia saw vulnerability in Adrian, not the calculated kind designed to manipulate, but the real, unfiltered kind that exposed his humanity. The revelation unsettled her, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about their situation. Was she truly ready for the challenges ahead? Could she navigate the treacherous waters of fame and ambition without losing herself in the process? And what about Adrian? How much longer could he shoulder the expectations placed upon him before it consumed him entirely? These questions swirled in her mind, amplifying the sense of uncertainty that had plagued her since the photo. Yet, amidst the turmoil, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him, a magnetic force that defied logic and reason. Their dynamic continued to evolve, marked by moments of intimacy interspersed with periods of guarded distance. They spent hours discussing ideas, debating strategies, and refining concepts for future projects. In these instances, the chemistry between them was undeniable, sparking a creative synergy that pushed boundaries and inspired innovation. But outside the confines of work, their interactions grew increasingly strained. Adrian became more reserved, his smiles fleeting and his words measured. Mia sensed he was holding back, shielding himself from something or someone. It frustrated her, this inability to fully understand him, to bridge the gap that seemed to widen with each passing day. Meanwhile, external pressures mounted. Requests for joint interviews poured in, accompanied by lucrative offers for endorsements and collaborations. Publicists urged them to capitalize on the buzz surrounding their partnership, framing it as a testament to teamwork and vision. While Mia recognized the potential benefits, she couldn't shake the feeling that agreeing to such arrangements would blur the lines even further, complicating an already delicate dynamic. Adrian shared her reservations, though his reasons were less altruistic. "We can't let them dictate our narrative," he warned during one particularly heated discussion. "Once we do, we lose control." Despite their shared concerns, the decision ultimately rested with Adrian. As CEO, he held the final say, and Mia knew better than to challenge him outright. Still, she couldn't help but feel powerless, relegated to the sidelines while others determined the course of her fate. It was a bitter pill to swallow, especially after proving herself time and again. Yet, anger gave way to determination. If she couldn't influence the outcome directly, she resolved to focus on what she could control: her work, her integrity, and her unwavering commitment to excellence. That's the weeks turned into months. Mia threw herself into new projects, channeling her frustrations into creativity. She collaborated with emerging designers, mentored junior interns, and spearheaded initiatives aimed at promoting inclusivity within the industry. Her efforts earned her respect and admiration from peers, solidifying her position as a rising star within Looks Bridal. Yet, no matter how much she achieved, the shadow of uncertainty loomed large. Rumors persisted, tabloids speculated, and tensions simmered beneath the surface. Every triumph felt tainted by the knowledge that she was walking a tightrope. One misstep away from disaster. Adrian watched her transformation with a mixture of pride and apprehension. On one hand, he admired her resilience, her ability to rise above adversity and carve out her place in a notoriously cutthroat world. On the other hand, he feared for her safety, both professionally and personally. The higher she climbed, the greater the risk of falling, and he couldn't bear the thought of being responsible for her downfall. It was a burden he carried silently, hidden behind the facade of stoicism he presented to the world. But late at night, when the office was empty and the city slept, he allowed himself to confront the truth. He cared about Mia more than he should, more than was wise, and that realization scared him more than anything else. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a routine meeting with the board of directors, discussions revolved around expansion plans, marketing budgets, and quarterly projections, topics that typically bored Mia to tears. But this time, something caught her attention. A proposal was put forward to rebrand Looks Bridal, positioning it as a global powerhouse, synonymous with luxury and exclusivity. At its core, the idea was sound, aligning perfectly with Adrian's vision for the company. However, buried within the fine print was a clause that sent a chill down Mia's spine, a requirement for key figures, including Adrian, to undergo extensive media training and participate in high-profile publicity stunts. The implications were clear. If approved, the plan would thrust both of them deeper into the limelight, erasing any semblance of privacy or autonomy. Mia exchanged a glance with Adrian, noting the tension etched on his face. He remained silent throughout the presentation, his jaw clenched tightly as if restraining himself from speaking out. When the floor opened for comments, he weighed his words carefully, raising valid concerns about the feasibility and ethical implications of the proposal. His objections were met with resistance, however, as board members argued that the risks were outweighed by the potential rewards. By the end of the meeting, it was evident that Adrian's stance had done little to sway the majority. The decision would be finalized in the coming weeks, leaving them with limited options. Back in his office, Adrian paced restlessly, his frustration palpable. Mia hovered near the doorway, unsure whether to intrude or give him space. "This isn't what I signed up for," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He stopped pacing, turning to face her. "I don't know," he admitted, his tone heavy with resignation. "But whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." His words, though meant to reassure, only added to the weight pressing down on her shoulders. Together, that single word carried so much promise and peril. As the days slipped away, Mia found herself grappling with conflicting emotions. Part of her clung to Adrian's reassurance, drawing strength from his unwavering support. Another part recoiled at the prospect of becoming entangled in a web of obligations and expectations that threatened to suffocate them both. She yearned for clarity, for answers that eluded her grasp. Would they emerge stronger from this trial, or would it tear them apart? And what price would they have to pay for pursuing their dreams? The days that followed felt like walking through a fog, each step uncertain and heavy. Mia's mind was a whirlpool of thoughts, swirling with questions about the future and doubts about her place in it. Adrian's promise to face whatever came next together lingered in her mind, but it didn't erase the gnawing uncertainty. The board's decision loomed over them like a storm cloud, its shadow casting everything into sharp relief. Every meeting, every email, every casual conversation seemed to revolve around the rebranding proposal, as if the company itself had shifted gears entirely. It wasn't just business anymore, it was personal, and for Mia that made it infinitely more complicated. Adrian, too, was grappling with his own internal battle. As much as he tried to project calm and control, the cracks were beginning to show. He spent long hours holed up in his office, poring over spreadsheets and strategy documents, searching for loopholes or alternatives that might appease the board without sacrificing their integrity. But the more he dug, the clearer it became. There was no easy way out. The board wasn't interested in compromise. They wanted results, visibility, and growth, no matter the cost. For someone who prided himself on being untouchable, Adrian found himself feeling vulnerable in ways he hadn't experienced in years. He hated it. Worse still, he couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at him whenever he looked at Mia. She had walked into this world blindly, trusting him to guide her, and now she was caught in the crossfire of decisions she never asked to make. One afternoon, Mia found herself sitting across from Sophie, one of the senior designers whose opinion carried weight within the company. Sophie was known for her sharp wit and unfiltered honesty, qualities that made her both admired and feared. Today, however, her demeanor was unusually subdued. "You know," Sophie began, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly, "you've done something remarkable here." Mia blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you," she replied cautiously, unsure where this was heading. Sophie leaned forward, lowering her voice. "But you also need to be careful. People are watching you, not just the media, but everyone. Your choices matter now, more than you realize." Mia nodded slowly, absorbing the words. Sophie wasn't telling her anything she didn't already suspect, but hearing it aloud somehow made it worse. "I don't want to let anyone down," Mia admitted quietly, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Sophie raised an eyebrow. "That's not what I'm worried about. What happens when you start letting yourself down, when all these expectations crush the person you used to be?" Her question hit home, striking a chord deep within Mia. It was a fear she'd been suppressing, shoving it into the recesses of her mind where it couldn't distract her from the task at hand. But now, confronted with it head-on, she couldn't ignore it any longer. Meanwhile, Adrian faced mounting pressure from unexpected quarters. A prominent fashion critic, known for his scathing reviews and razor-sharp commentary, published an article dissecting Lux Bridal's recent success. While he praised the collection's innovation and craftsmanship, he questioned the authenticity of its narrative. "Is this artistry or spectacle?" he wrote, his words dripping with skepticism. "One can't help but wonder whether the storyline is genuine inspiration or clever marketing." The piece went viral, sparking debates across social media platforms and drawing renewed attention to Mia's role in the campaign. Supporters hailed her as a symbol of perseverance and creativity, while detractors accused her of riding coattails and exploiting her proximity to power. The dichotomy was exhausting, leaving Mia torn between defending herself and staying silent. Adrian read the article late one night, his jaw tightening with each sentence. He knew criticism came with the territory, but this felt different, personal. The implication that Mia's contributions were somehow less valid because of her association with him stung deeply. He reached for his phone, debating whether to call her, but hesitated. What could he say that wouldn't sound hollow or defensive? Instead, he drafted a terse response to the critic, pointing out factual inaccuracies and emphasizing the collaborative nature of the project. By morning, his rebuttal had garnered significant traction, further fueling the firestorm of opinions. For a brief moment, Adrian allowed himself to feel vindicated. Then reality set in. The controversy wasn't going away anytime soon. Amidst the chaos, Mia sought solace in small moments of normalcy. She spent evenings sketching designs in her apartment, losing herself in the rhythmic strokes of pencil against paper. Sometimes, she'd visit a local cafe, sipping tea while observing the ebb and flow of strangers' lives. These fleeting escapes grounded her, reminding her of who she was outside the gilded walls of Lux Bridal. Yet, even in these quiet interludes, the tension followed her. Strangers recognized her from magazine covers or Instagram posts, approaching her with wide-eyed admiration or thinly veiled curiosity. Each encounter left her feeling exposed, stripped of the anonymity she once cherished. Back at work, subplots began to unfold, adding layers of complexity to an already tangled web. One of the junior interns, Clara, started spending more time around Mia, seeking advice and mentorship. At first, Mia welcomed the distraction, eager to share her experiences and offer guidance. But as Clara grew bolder, asking pointed questions about her relationship with Adrian and the secrets behind her meteoric rise, Mia grew wary. Was Clara genuinely interested in learning, or was she gathering material for gossip? The ambiguity left Mia second-guessing every interaction, further isolating her from those around her. Another subplot emerged when Adrian received an anonymous tip about potential sabotage within the company. Someone had allegedly leaked confidential information to competitors, jeopardizing upcoming projects. The revelation sent shockwaves through the team, forcing everyone to scrutinize their colleagues and question alliances. Suspicion fell on several individuals, including a disgruntled designer who had clashed repeatedly with Adrian during creative meetings. As investigations unfolded, tensions escalated, poisoning the atmosphere with mistrust and paranoia. For Mia, the situation felt surreal, a corporate thriller playing out in real time with stakes higher than ever before. Through it all, Adrian and Mia continued to navigate their evolving dynamic, tiptoeing around unspoken boundaries. They communicated primarily through work-related discussions, their conversations laced with underlying currents of emotion neither dared address directly. Occasionally, their eyes would meet across a crowded room, holding gazes just long enough to convey understanding and longing before breaking away. It was maddening, this push and pull dance they performed, always teetering on the edge of something neither fully understood nor controlled. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Adrian invited Mia to join him for dinner at a secluded restaurant. The invitation caught her off guard, stirring conflicting emotions. Part of her yearned for the chance to connect outside the confines of the office, free from prying eyes and whispered rumors. Another part recoiled at the risk, knowing how easily such a gesture could be misinterpreted. Ultimately, curiosity won out. She accepted, choosing a simple yet elegant outfit that struck a balance between professionalism and approachability. The restaurant was intimate, its dim lighting and soft jazz music creating an ambience of quiet sophistication. They sat at a corner table, shielded from view by tall plants and flickering candles. Conversation flowed haltingly at first, punctuated by awkward silences and cautious smiles, but as the meal progressed, barriers began to crumble. Adrian spoke candidly about his struggles with the board, revealing fears he rarely voiced aloud. Mia listened intently, offering empathy rather than solutions. In turn, she opened up about her insecurities, sharing doubts she had buried beneath layers of determination. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to be vulnerable, shedding the armor they wore so faithfully in public. Yet, even in this rare moment of connection, shadows loomed. As they prepared to leave, Adrian hesitated, his hand lingering on hers. "We can't keep doing this," he said softly, his voice tinged with regret. "Not like this." Mia stared at him, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Us. It's not fair to either of us, not with everything hanging in the balance." His words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Mia swallowed hard, forcing herself to nod. "I understand," she whispered, though every fiber of her being screamed in protest. The drive home was silent, the weight of their unresolved feelings pressing down on them both. As Mia stepped out of the car and watched Adrian drive away, she realized something crucial. Whatever happened next, they couldn't go back to the way things were. The fragile equilibrium they had maintained was shattered, leaving only questions and uncertainties in its wake. And as she stood there, alone under the cold glow of streetlights, she wondered if she was ready to face the storm ahead or if she would be swept away by it entirely. The days following that dinner felt like walking on a tightrope stretched over an abyss. Every interaction between Mia and Adrian was charged with unspoken tension, each glance or word heavy with meaning neither dared to articulate. The air in the office grew thicker, almost suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Colleagues tiptoed around them, sensing the fragile dynamic but unsure how to navigate it. Rumors swirled faster than ever, fueled by the absence of clear answers and the lingering uncertainty that hung over everything they did. It wasn't just about the rebranding proposal anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and the choices that would define not only their careers but also their lives. Adrian threw himself into work with renewed intensity, his focus razor-sharp as he tackled one challenge after another. Yet beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. His usual calm demeanor faltered at times, replaced by flashes of frustration that startled those who worked closely with him. During meetings, he snapped at minor mistakes, his patience wearing thin. Late at night, when the office emptied out and silence enveloped the space, he sat alone in his dimly lit office, staring at documents without really seeing them. The weight of leadership pressed down on him, heavier than ever before. He had always prided himself on being able to compartmentalize, to separate personal emotions from professional decisions. But now, the lines blurred so completely that he could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. For Mia, the pressure manifested differently. She poured her energy into creative projects, sketching designs late into the night and volunteering for tasks that kept her busy. Her sketches became bolder, more experimental, a reflection of her inner turmoil spilling onto paper. Yet, despite her outward determination, She couldn't escape the gnawing sense of unease that followed her everywhere. Every decision felt monumental, every move scrutinized under a microscope. Even simple choices what to wear, which email to respond to first felt loaded with implications. She found herself questioning motives behind every smile, every compliment, every critique. Who could she trust? And perhaps more importantly, who could she be? The sabotage investigation added another layer of chaos to an already volatile situation. Evidence pointed toward a senior designer named Marcus, whose resentment toward Adrian had been simmering for years. When confronted, Marcus denied any involvement, his indignation seemingly genuine, but whispers persisted, spreading like wildfire through the ranks. Some believed him innocent, a scapegoat created by those seeking to deflect blame. Others thought him guilty, citing past grievances as proof of motive. Either way, the accusation fractured the team further, sowing seeds of doubt that took root deep within the company culture. For Mia, it served as a stark reminder of how quickly alliances could shift and how fragile trust truly was. Amidst the growing instability, Adrian made a bold move. He called an emergency meeting with the board. The room buzzed with anticipation. As executives filed in, their faces unreadable masks of curiosity and suspicion. Adrian stood at the head of the table, his posture rigid but his voice steady. "I understand your concerns about visibility and growth," he began, addressing the rebranding proposal directly. "But I refuse to compromise our values or our people for short-term gains." His statement drew murmurs of surprise, some approving, others skeptical. Before anyone could interject, he continued, laying out an alternative plan that balanced innovation with authenticity. It was risky, unconventional, and required buy-in from everyone involved. As he concluded, the room fell silent, the gravity of his words sinking in. Mia watched the exchange from the sidelines, her heart pounding. She hadn't been invited to the meeting, but she lingered nearby, catching snippets of conversation through slightly ajar doors. When Adrian emerged afterward, his expression gave nothing away. "How did it go?" she asked hesitantly. Stepping forward, he exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "We'll see," he replied cryptically. His tone suggested both hope and apprehension, leaving her unsettled. Whatever happened next, she knew it would change everything. As the hours ticked by, the atmosphere in the office shifted subtly. Whispers turned to hushed debates, speculation giving way to cautious optimism. The board hadn't rejected Adrian's proposal outright, but they hadn't fully endorsed it either. Instead, they requested revisions, demanding detailed projections and contingency plans. The message was clear: prove it works, or face the consequences. For Mia, this reprieve felt less like relief and more like borrowed time. The clock was ticking louder than ever, each second amplifying the stakes. Meanwhile, external pressures mounted. Reporters camped outside the office building, microphones and cameras at the ready. Social media erupted with theories and predictions. Hashtags trending globally as fans and critics alike weighed in on Lux Bridal's future. Publicists urged Adrian and Mia to make a joint statement, framing their partnership as a beacon of unity and vision. Both resisted, knowing such a move would invite even more scrutiny. Yet the lack of response only fueled speculation, turning what should have been a moment of triumph into a spectacle of conjecture. One evening, as Mia worked late in the design studio, she received an unexpected visitor. Sophie appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. "You need to decide what you want," Sophie said bluntly, cutting straight to the point. Mia looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" she asked, though part of her already knew. Sophie stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This isn't just about Adrian or the board or the media. It's about you. What kind of life are you willing to live? Because right now you're letting everyone else dictate the terms." Her words struck a nerve, forcing Mia to confront the truth she'd been avoiding. Was she staying because she believed in the work or because she was afraid to leave? Back in his office, Adrian wrestled with similar questions. He stared at a photo on his desk, taken during the launch event. In it, Mia stood beside him, smiling brightly despite the chaos swirling around them. That moment had felt pure, untainted by agendas or expectations. Now it seemed impossibly distant, like a dream slipping through his fingers. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Clara, the junior intern who had been shadowing Mia. "Can I talk to you?" she asked nervously, clutching a folder tightly. Adrian gestured for her to sit, intrigued by the urgency in her voice. What she revealed next sent shockwaves. Through him a revelation that tied together loose threads and raised new questions. Clara handed him documents detailing discrepancies in project timelines and budget allocations. At first glance, they appeared innocuous, routine even, but upon closer inspection, patterns emerged, patterns that suggested deliberate manipulation. Someone within the company was orchestrating moves designed to undermine both Adrian and Mia, setting them up for failure while positioning themselves for success. The realization hit Adrian like a punch to the gut. Betrayal cut deeper than any criticism or rumor ever could. And yet, amidst the anger and disbelief, a flicker of clarity emerged. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about justice. By the time Mia joined Adrian later that night, the pieces were falling into place, but not fast enough. They met in the showroom, surrounded by mannequins, draped in gowns that shimmered faintly under the moonlight streaming through the windows. The beauty of the scene contrasted sharply with the storm brewing inside them. "We can't keep reacting," Adrian said, his voice low but firm. "It's time to take control." Mia nodded, her resolve hardening. Together they outlined a plan, piecing together clues and strategizing their next steps. It was risky, requiring absolute trust and coordination. But as they finalized the details, something shifted between them, a renewed sense of purpose, binding them closer than ever before. The following morning, the office buzzed with anticipation. Something big was coming, though no one knew exactly what. Adrian called an all-hands meeting, gathering the entire team in the main conference room. Tension crackled in the air as he took the stage, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Change is inevitable," he began, his gaze sweeping across the room. "But how we respond defines us." With that, he unveiled their counter-proposal, not just a defense against the board's demands, but a bold declaration of intent. Was daring, ambitious, and unapologetically authentic. As gasps rippled through the crowd, Mia stepped forward, standing beside Adrian. Their combined strength radiated outward, silencing doubts and sparking hope. But the battle was far from over. Outside forces converged, determined to tear them apart. Journalists demanded exclusives, competitors launched smear campaigns, and internal saboteurs doubled down on their efforts. Each obstacle tested their resolve, pushing them to their limits. Yet, through it all, they held firm, drawing strength from the bond forged in fire. The climax approached rapidly, a collision of ideals, ambitions, and truths that would leave no stone unturned. And as the final pieces fell into place, one question remained: would they emerge victorious or shattered beyond repair? As the hours leading up to the board's final verdict ticked away, the energy in Lux Bridal's headquarters was nothing short of electric. The air buzzed with a mix of anticipation and dread, every corner of the office heavy with unspoken fears and whispered hopes. Mia moved through it all like a ghost, her footsteps silent but her mind roaring with questions. Could their counter-proposal hold up against the scrutiny they were about to face? Would Adrian's gamble pay off, or would it all come crashing down around them? She clutched her sketchbook tightly to her chest, as if it could shield her from the storm brewing just outside the calm she tried so desperately to maintain. Adrian, too, seemed caught between worlds. On one hand, he exuded confidence during meetings, his authoritative tone unwavering as he addressed concerns and fielded objections. But behind closed doors, his composure faltered. He spent late nights pacing his office, staring at spreadsheets and timelines until the numbers blurred together. Sleep eluded him, his thoughts consumed by worst-case scenarios. What if the board rejected their plan outright? What if Marcus's sabotage allegations spiraled out of control? And what if, despite everything, he failed, not just himself, but Mia, whose trust in him had become both a lifeline and a burden? The tension reached a breaking point when an anonymous email landed in Adrian's inbox late one evening. It contained damning evidence, leaked documents suggesting that Lux Bridal's recent success wasn't due to innovation or creativity, but rather insider trading and manipulated data. The accusations were explosive, designed to dismantle the company's reputation brick by brick. Adrian stared at the screen, his blood running cold. Whoever was orchestrating this attack wasn't playing games. They wanted destruction, plain and simple. Mia found him still sitting at his desk, hours later, his face pale and his tie loosened. "What is it?" she asked softly, dread pooling in her stomach even before he spoke. Without a word, Adrian turned the laptop toward her, letting her read the email for herself. Her breath hitched as she scrolled through the attachments, each document more incriminating than the last. This can't be true," she stammered, though doubt crept into her voice. Adrian shook his head. "I don't know what's real anymore," he admitted, his tone hollow. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked defeated. Yet, defeat wasn't an option, not now, not when so much hung in the balance. Mia straightened her shoulders, determination hardening her features. "We'll figure it out," she said firmly, though her hands trembled slightly. Together, Adrian glanced at her, surprise flickering across his face. Then, slowly, he nodded. Together. That single word carried weight, binding them in a way neither fully understood yet. They dove into the documents, crossed dates, names, and figures, searching for inconsistencies or clues that might expose the truth. It was painstaking work, requiring focus and patience neither of them felt they had. But as dawn broke over the city, something clicked, a pattern hidden in plain sight, pointing directly to someone within their inner circle. Meanwhile, the media frenzy intensified. Tabloids ran headlines speculating about the validity of the leaked documents, painting looks bridled as either victims of a smear campaign or perpetrators of corporate fraud. Social media erupted with hashtags, some defending the brand, others calling for accountability. Reporters camped outside the building, shouting questions whenever anyone entered or exited. The pressure mounted exponentially, turning the world of high fashion into a battleground where reputations were made and destroyed in the blink of an eye. Sophie approached Mia during a rare moment of quiet, her expression grim. "You need to prepare for the worst," she said bluntly, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Mia frowned, bracing herself for whatever Sophie was about to say next. "If this blows up and it might, you're going to take the fall. You're the face of the collection, remember? The intern who stepped in at the last minute. Everyone will blame you." Her words hit like a punch to the gut, leaving Mia momentarily speechless. Was Sophie right? Had she been set up to fail from the start? Determined not to let fear dictate her actions, Mia sought out Clara, hoping the junior intern might have insights she hadn't considered. Clara listened intently, her wide eyes reflecting both admiration and concern. When Mia finished explaining the situation, Clara hesitated before speaking. "There's something I haven't told anyone," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I overheard Marcus talking to someone on the phone last week. He mentioned something about tying up loose ends. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now," her voice trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air. Mia's heart raced. If Marcus was involved, then the betrayal ran deeper than she'd imagined. Armed with this new information, Mia and Adrian reconvened in the showroom, the same space where it had all begun months ago. Surrounded by gowns that shimmered faintly under the soft glow of overhead lights, they pieced together the puzzle. Adrian's sharp mind dissected the timeline, connecting dots Mia hadn't noticed. "It's not just Marcus," he said finally, his voice low and urgent. "He's working with someone else, someone higher up." The realization sent a chill down Mia's spine. If the conspiracy went beyond Marcus, then trust within the company was practically non-existent. Who could they rely on? Who could they believe? As the clock counted down to the board meeting, the stakes grew impossibly high. Adrian called key members of the team into his office, sharing only fragments of what they'd uncovered. Loyalty became currency, traded cautiously in exchange for cooperation. Some rallied behind him, eager to protect the company they'd poured their hearts into. Others hedged their bets, unwilling to commit fully until the dust settled. Through it all, Mia remained a constant presence at Adrian's side, her quiet strength steadying him when doubts threatened to overwhelm him. The morning of the board meeting arrived, gray skies casting a somber pall over the city. Adrian and Mia walked into the conference room together, their strides synchronized despite the chaos swirling inside them. The board members sat stiffly around the table, their expressions unreadable masks of authority. As Adrian began presenting their findings, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Gasps rippled through the room as he revealed evidence implicating Marcusson, another senior executive, in the sabotage plot. Whispers erupted, accusations flying like arrows across the table. Yet, even as the tide seemed to turn in their favor, uncertainty lingered. Would the board accept their explanation, or would they demand further proof? Just as Adrian concluded his presentation, a commotion broke out in the hallway. Voices rose sharply, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. The door burst open, revealing Marcus flanked by security guards. His face was red with anger, his eyes blazing with defiance. "You think you can pin this on me?" he spat, glaring at Adrian. "I'm not the only one with secrets." The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. All eyes turned to Adrian, waiting for his response. For a moment, silence reigned supreme. And then, amidst the chaos, Mia stepped forward, Her voice rang out clear and steady, cutting through the noise like a knife. "Let's stop pretending we don't know the truth," she said, her gaze sweeping across the room. Every word carried conviction, born from sleepless nights and countless sacrifices, because the truth is coming out whether any of us are ready for it or not. With that, she handed a folder to the board chair, its contents sealed but unmistakably significant. Adrian watched her, pride swelling in his chest even as uncertainty clawed at his mind. Whatever happened next, they were standing on the precipice and there was no turning back. The folder Mia placed on the table seemed to pulse with significance. Its weight felt not just in the room but in the collective breaths of everyone present. The board chair hesitated before opening it, his fingers brushing against the edge as though testing whether it might bite. When he finally flipped it open, the sharp intake of his breath signaled that whatever was inside wasn't what anyone had expected. Adrian's eyes darted between the folder and Mia, searching for answers she hadn't yet shared with him. Her expression gave nothing away, resolute, almost serene, but her tightly clenched fists betrayed the storm raging beneath her surface. As the board chair sifted through the documents, murmurs rippled through the room like ripples on a pond disturbed by a stone. Names were whispered, accusations traded under strained smiles. Marcus stood frozen near the doorway, his bravado crumbling as realization dawned across his face. Whatever Mia had uncovered went far beyond implicating him. It pulled threads that unraveled the carefully woven fabric of Luke's Bridal's inner workings. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his voice cutting through the growing din. "What does it say?" he demanded, his tone sharper than intended. The board chair looked up, his expression unreadable, and simply gestured for silence. He continued reading, flipping pages with deliberate slowness that made every second feel interminable. Mia's decision to share this information now, to lay all their cards on the table, wasn't made lightly. She'd spent sleepless nights, weighing the risks, knowing full well that exposing these truths could either save them or destroy everything they'd built. But standing there, watching the reactions unfold in real time, she felt no regret. This wasn't about protecting herself or even Adrian anymore. It was about integrity, about proving that success didn't have to come at the cost of honesty. Still, doubt lingered at the edges of her mind. What if the evidence wasn't enough? What if the board deemed it circumstantial, leaving them vulnerable to further attacks? Adrian noticed the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes and stepped closer, subtly positioning himself between her and the rest of the room. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable, but it spoke volumes. To those who understood their dynamic, it was a declaration. They were in this together, come what may. For Mia, it was exactly what she needed to steady her nerves. She took a deep breath, letting the moment settle over her like armor. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. Back in the chaos outside the conference room, reporters caught wind of the unfolding drama. Phones buzzed incessantly, emails flooded inboxes, and live updates streamed across social media platforms. Speculation ran rampant, fueled by fragmented leaks from within the company. Was Marcus being fired? Had Adrian lost control of Luke's Bridal? Or was this some elaborate scheme to deflect blame? The public narrative shifted wildly, each new theory more sensational than the last. Inside the building, security tightened, barring entry to anyone not directly involved. Tension crackled in the air, palpable enough to taste. Meanwhile, Clara watched the spectacle unfold from her desk, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and admiration. She hadn't realized how deeply entangled she'd become in this web, until now, her seemingly innocent observations becoming pivotal pieces of the puzzle. Guilt gnawed at her. Had she done the right thing by sharing what she knew? Would anyone believe her motives were pure when trust itself had become such a fragile commodity? She glanced toward the closed doors of the conference room, imagining the high-stakes confrontation happening behind them. Whatever happened next would ripple outward, affecting everyone connected to Luke's Bridal, including her. Inside, the board chair finally set the folder down, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his glasses. "Troubling," he said, his voice measured but heavy with implication. Troubling wasn't nearly strong enough a word for what they were dealing with. The documents revealed not only Marcus's role in the sabotage but also ties to an external competitor eager to undermine Luke's Bridal's dominance in the bridal market. Worse still, they hinted at complicity from another senior executives, someone whose name sent a collective shiver through the room when it was spoken aloud. Betrayal cut deeper here, slicing through layers of loyalty and history that had once seemed unshakable. Marcus broke the silence first, his voice rising hysterically. "You can't pin this all on me," he shouted, his composure fracturing completely. I'm not the villain, here you are. His finger jabbed accusingly at Adrian, then swept around the room to encompass the entire board. All of you. You created this mess, and now you're scrambling to cover your tracks. His outburst hung in the air, raw and ugly, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths. Yes, Marcus had played his part, but he was far from the mastermind. Someone else had orchestrated this betrayal, pulling strings from the shadows while others danced to their tune. Adrian stepped forward, his voice cutting through Marcus's tirade like a blade. Enough, he said, his tone icy yet controlled. We're not here to play the blame game, we're here to fix this. His gaze swept across the room, daring anyone to challenge him. When no one did, he turned back to the board chair. What happens next depends on us. Do we let fear dictate our actions, or do we take responsibility for everything? The question hung in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore. Mia stood quietly beside him, her presence grounding him even as her own thoughts raced ahead. If the board decided to sweep this under the rug, it would only be a temporary fix. The cracks would widen, the lies would multiply, and eventually, the foundation would collapse entirely. But if they chose transparency, if they embraced accountability, it could redefine Lux Bridal's legacy. It was a gamble, one that required courage and conviction. And as much as she wanted to believe in the possibility of redemption, the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her chest like a vice, just as the board began deliberating. Another twist threw the room into further disarray. A call came in urgent, unexpected from the CEO of the rival company implicated in the sabotage plot. They requested an immediate meeting, claiming to possess information critical to resolving the situation. The offer was tempting yet dangerous, a double-edged sword that could either vindicate Lux Bridal or drag them deeper into scandal. Adrian exchanged a glance with Mia, silently asking for her input. Her nod was slight but decisive. They couldn't afford to ignore it, not now. Not when so much remained unresolved. The decision to meet with the rival CEO added another layer of complexity to an already precarious situation. Whispers spread quickly among the staff, speculation running wild about what might transpire. Some saw it as a desperate move, a Hail Mary attempt to salvage their reputation. Others viewed it as a calculated risk, a chance to turn the tables on those who sought to destroy them. Either way, the stakes had never been higher. As Adrian and Mia prepared to leave for the meeting, the tension in the office reached a fever pitch. Every step they took felt like walking toward a precipice, unsure whether they'd find solid ground or plummet into darkness. Start in the car ride to the rendezvous point. Neither spoke. The silence between them was charged, filled with unspoken fears and hopes. Adrian gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white against the leather. Mia stared out the window, watching the city blur past in streaks of light and shadow. Both knew that whatever awaited them at the end of this journey would change everything, not just for Lux Bridal, but for themselves as well. Their partnership, forged in fire and tested by betrayal, stood on the brink of transformation. Would it emerge stronger, tempered by adversity? Or would it shatter under the weight of expectations and secrets too heavy to bear? As they arrived at the designated location, a sleek, modern office tower overlooking the city, their resolve hardened. Whatever happened next, they would face it head-on together. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless, each ding marking another floor past and another second closer to the unknown. When the doors slid open, they were greeted by a figure waiting patiently, arms crossed, an expression unreadable. Behind them loomed the promise of answers and consequences that would determine their fate. The room was sleek and minimalist, its walls adorned with abstract art that seemed to mirror the tension in the air. The rival CEO stood near a floor-to-ceiling window, their silhouette framed by the glittering cityscape beyond. Adrian and Mia exchanged a glance before stepping inside, their movements deliberate but cautious. The atmosphere crackled with unspoken hostility, yet there was an undercurrent of curiosity too on both sides. "You've got our attention," Adrian said, his tone clipped but measured. "Now talk." The rival CEO turned slowly, their expression inscrutable. For a moment no one spoke, the silence stretching taut like a wire ready to snap. Then they gestured toward the seating area, a cluster of low-backed chairs arranged around a glass coffee table. "Sit," they said simply, their voice calm but commanding. Adrian hesitated, then nodded at Mia, who followed suit. They sat down, their postures rigid, as the rival CEO joined them, placing a thin folder on the table between them. "Before we begin," they said, leaning back slightly, "let me make one thing clear. I didn't come here to destroy you. I came to offer a way out for all of us. Adrian's brow furrowed, suspicion etched into every line of his face. What exactly are you proposing? He asked, his voice laced with skepticism. The rival CEO opened the folder, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. It contained a proposal, an alliance of sorts, landing a collaboration between Lux Bridal and their company. The terms were surprisingly generous, almost too good to be true, but buried within the fine print was a clause that caught Mia's eye: full disclosure of the sabotage plot, including evidence implicating Marcus and the other senior executive tied to it. In exchange, Lux Bridal would agree to co-brand certain collections, sharing resources and expertise. Mia leaned forward, her pulse quickening. Why would you do this? She asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. After everything your company has done, why help us now? The rival CEO smiled faintly, a flicker of something regret crossing their features. Because we underestimated you, they admitted, their tone softer now. And because dragging this out benefits no one, we're willing to cut our losses and yours if it means moving forward cleanly. Their words hung in the air, heavy with implication. This wasn't just about business. It was about survival for both companies. Adrian studied the document carefully, his mind racing through possibilities. On the surface, the deal seemed sound, even beneficial. But trust was fragile, especially after everything they'd endured. He glanced at Mia, seeking her input without saying a word. She met his gaze, her expression thoughtful but resolute. It's risky, she murmured, leaning closer so only he could hear. But if we don't take it, we might never get another chance to clear our names or rebuild. Her words struck a chord, echoing his own thoughts. Taking a deep breath, Adrian looked back at the rival CEO. We'll need time to review this thoroughly, he said firmly. But we're listening. Back at Lux Bridal headquarters, the board convened once again, this time armed with the rival company's proposal. The room buzzed with debate, opinions divided between those eager to seize the opportunity and others wary of trusting their competitors. Adrian navigated the discussion with precision, addressing concerns while highlighting the potential benefits. Mia remained quiet for most of the meeting, observing the dynamics play out. When the conversation shifted to the question of accountability, she finally spoke up. This isn't just about saving ourselves, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. It's about setting an example for transparency, for integrity. If we walk away from this without owning our mistakes, we lose more than credibility. We lose ourselves. Her words resonated deeply, swaying even the most skeptical members of the board. By the end of the session, a decision had been reached. Lux Bridal would accept the rival company's offer, provided certain conditions were met. Full transparency would be non-negotiable, and any wrongdoing, internal or external, would be addressed publicly. It was a bold move, one that carried significant risk, but also immense potential. As the meeting adjourned, Adrian approached Mia, his expression unreadable. You did it, he said quietly, his voice tinged with admiration. You gave them something to believe in. She shook her head, smiling faintly. We did it, she corrected, together. In the weeks that followed, Lux Bridal underwent a transformation unlike anything it had experienced before. The collaboration with their former rival breathed new life into the brand, infusing it with fresh perspectives and innovative designs. Public statements were issued, detailing the findings of the internal investigation and acknowledging past missteps. While the revelations sparked initial backlash, the company's commitment to transparency earned widespread respect. Customers responded positively, drawn not only to the stunning gowns but also to the authenticity behind them. Marcus and the implicated senior executive faced consequences for their actions, though not without resistance. Legal proceedings dragged on, casting long shadows over the industry. Yet, amidst the turmoil, seeds of change began to sprout. Employees at Lux Bridal found themselves re-evaluating priorities, embracing values of honesty and teamwork. Clara, inspired by Mia's courage, stepped into a leadership role among junior interns, fostering a culture of open communication and mutual support. Sophie, too, played a pivotal role, mentoring emerging designers and championing inclusivity within the creative process. For Mia, the journey marked a turning point she hadn't anticipated. What started as a leap of faith during a photo shoot evolved into a defining chapter of her life. She transitioned from intern to key figure within Lux Bridal, her contributions recognized not just for their creativity but also for their impact. The media dubbed her the girl who saved bridal couture, a title she accepted with humility. Yet beneath the accolades lay a deeper realization. Success wasn't about titles or recognition, it was about staying true to oneself, even when the world demanded otherwise. Adrian, too, emerged changed by the experience. The weight of leadership lightened somewhat, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. He learned to balance ambition with empathy, recognizing that strength often lies in vulnerability. His relationship with Mia grew stronger, evolving into a partnership built on trust and shared vision. Though neither labeled it outright, the connection between them became undeniable, a quiet force that anchored them through challenges ahead. As the year drew to a close, Luxe Bridal hosted its annual gala celebration of resilience, reinvention, and hope. The event was held in a grand ballroom, its opulent decor reflecting the elegance of the brand itself. Models glided down the runway in breathtaking gowns, each piece telling a story of triumph against adversity. At the center of it all stood Mia and Adrian, side by side, watching as their collective efforts unfolded before a captivated audience. When the final gown appeared, a shimmering masterpiece, inspired by Mia's original debut, the crowd erupted into applause, cheers echoing off marble walls. That night, as the festivities wound down, Mia wandered onto a balcony overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below, a sea of constellations mirroring the stars above. Adrian joined her moments later, handing her a glass of champagne. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. She smiled, clinking hers against his. "And old lessons," she added softly. They stood there in comfortable silence, letting the moment settle over them like a warm embrace. Reflecting on everything they'd been through, Mia felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the outcome, but for the journey itself. It taught her that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That trust, once broken, can be rebuilt but only with effort and sincerity, and that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from rising together. As she glanced at Adrian, she knew they still had much to navigate, challenges yet unseen waiting just beyond the horizon. But for now, standing here under the vast night sky, she allowed herself to savor the peace of knowing they'd faced a storm and emerged stronger for it.